Good evening, America. Tonight, I need you to hold two things in your mind at the same time, because they are both true, and together they tell you exactly what this war has become. Here's the first thing. President Donald Trump stood in front of reporters after watching the NBA Finals in New York on Monday night and said the deal to end this war could be reached in 2 or 3 days, that the Strait of Hormuz would reopen immediately after it is signed, and that this will be a very, very good deal that will not in any way allow nuclear weapons. 2 or 3 days, immediately. Very, very good. Here's the second thing. On the same day Trump said those words, Iran fired on a commercial tanker attempting to transit the Strait of Hormuz without Iranian permission. American forces shot down 2 Iranian attack drones that were launched at ships in the strait. And Iran's foreign ministry warned publicly on camera that it will resume full hostilities against the United States and Israel if Israel continues attacking Lebanon. 2 or 3 days away from a deal and ready to resume the war tomorrow. Both of those things are true at the same time tonight. And that impossible contradiction is exactly what this war has become after 104 days. Stay with me, because tonight's story is built on the clearest picture this channel has ever given you of where this war actually stands and what is really about to happen. Let us start with Trump's NBA Finals comments, because they deserve the full attention they have not received in today's coverage. On Monday night, June 9th, President Trump attended Game 3 of the NBA Finals between the San Antonio Spurs and the New York Knicks at Madison Square Garden in New York. The Knicks won. And afterward, speaking to reporters outside the arena, Trump said the two parties in the Iran war are in the final stages of a very, very good deal that will not in any way allow nuclear weapons. He said a deal could be reached in 2 or 3 days. He said the Strait of Hormuz would reopen immediately after such a deal is signed. He said he believes Iran now has roughly 21 to 22% of the missiles it had when the war started. He sounded optimistic. He sounded like a man who had watched a good basketball game and was about to announce the end of a war. And the markets responded immediately. Asian equity markets rallied. Japan's Nikkei 225 surged more than 3%. Oil prices fell on hopes that the strait would soon reopen. The financial world took Trump at his word. But here is what happened in the hours before and after Trump spoke to those reporters. In the early hours of June 12th, the United States military shot down 2 Iranian one-way attack drones near the Strait of Hormuz after Tehran's forces fired on a commercial vessel attempting to transit the waterway without coordination with Iranian authorities. Iranian state media confirmed the strike on the tanker, stating Iran's forces had fired toward a vessel attempting to traverse the waterway without Iranian permission. A senior U.S. defense official confirmed to RFE/RL that it appears Iran attempted to strike commercial ships transiting the Strait of Hormuz and that U.S. forces shot down the drones to protect civilian shipping. The senior official said traffic flow through the strait continues, and then added a detail that tells you everything about the current state of this so-called ceasefire. U.S. forces continue to conduct self-defense operations to enable commercial traffic in the strait. Self-defense operations in a strait that is supposed to be part of a deal that is 2 or 3 days away from being signed. America is shooting down Iranian drones, protecting commercial ships from Iranian attacks in a waterway that Trump says will be open immediately once the deal he describes as days away is signed. Now, let us be precise about what Trump said about Iran's military capability, because it is one of the most revealing statements he has made about the war in weeks. Trump told NBC News in a Meet the Press interview that Iran now has roughly 21 to 22% of the missiles it had when the war started on February 28th. Think about what that means. 104 days of American and Israeli strikes have reduced Iran's missile capacity to approximately 1/5 of what it was. That sounds like a devastating military defeat for Iran. And in purely quantitative terms, it is. America destroyed roughly 80% of Iran's missile arsenal over the course of this war. That is an extraordinary military accomplishment. But here is the strategic reality that the number does not capture. Iran's remaining 21 to 22% of its pre-war missile stockpile is still enough to fire 10 ballistic missiles at Israeli cities in a single night, as it did on Sunday. It is still enough to fire 7 ballistic missiles at American bases in Kuwait and Bahrain in a single salvo, as it did 6 days ago. Iran's depleted missile force is still capable of terrorizing multiple countries simultaneously, 80% destroyed and still capable of causing regional catastrophe. That is the strategic picture of what 104 days of war has actually accomplished. And Trump also said something else in that Meet the Press interview that deserves direct attention tonight. He said he believes Iran can still threaten the Strait of Hormuz. He acknowledged that explicitly. The President of the United States, on a Sunday morning television program, acknowledged that the country his military has been bombing for 104 days still has the ability to close the most important oil shipping lane on Earth. That admission is significant. It is honest. And it helps explain why the deal on the table accepts Iranian management of the strait, rather than demanding Iran surrender authority over the waterway entirely. Now let us talk about Israel and Lebanon, because the Lebanon front is the single most dangerous obstacle standing between where we are tonight and the 2- or 3-day deal Trump is describing. Netanyahu said on Monday, the same day Trump was describing a deal as days away, that the war against Iran and Hezbollah has not yet ended. He said both are weaker than ever. He said Israel will continue operating against both. And Netanyahu's government has been clearer than anyone about what they require for a Lebanon ceasefire. Israel's condition is unambiguous. The Lebanon ceasefire, according to NBC News reporting on the current negotiations, is contingent on a complete cessation of fire from Hezbollah and the evacuation of all Hezbollah operatives from the South Litani sector. Complete cessation, all operatives evacuated from a zone that begins at the Litani River, which Israel crossed weeks ago, and where its ground forces are currently operating. Israel wants Hezbollah not just to stop shooting. Israel wants Hezbollah physically removed from southern Lebanon. Hezbollah, for its part, has said it will withdraw from south of the Litani only if Israel simultaneously withdraws from Lebanese territory it currently occupies, and a complete unconditional ceasefire covers land, sea, and air. Those two positions have not moved toward each other in weeks, and a peace deal that requires both of those things to happen simultaneously has never been signed in the history of this conflict. Iran's position on Lebanon could not be clearer tonight. Iran's foreign ministry, speaking directly to CNBC, said Iran will resume hostilities if the Israel Defense Forces continue to attack Lebanon. Resume hostilities. Iran is not saying it might respond proportionately. It is not saying it will fire warning shots. It is saying it will resume the full war with the United States and Israel if Israeli attacks on Lebanon continue. That threat is not rhetorical. Iran has made the same threat multiple times and has followed through every single time. When Israel struck Beirut's Dahieh, Iran fired missiles at Israel. When Israel struck Lebanon again, Iran fired 10 ballistic missiles at Israeli cities and more at American bases in Bahrain and Jordan. The pattern is documented. The threat is real. And the Israeli ground offensive in Lebanon, that is the trigger for that threat, is still ongoing as you watch this video tonight. Pakistan's role in this crisis has reached a new and remarkable stage that deserves explicit attention. Vice President J.D. Vance, White House envoy Steve Witkoff, and Jared Kushner traveled to Pakistan on Saturday for direct peace talks with Iran through Pakistani intermediaries. That is 3 of the most senior members of the Trump administration simultaneously in Islamabad, sitting across from Pakistani officials who are relaying messages to Tehran. The physical presence of Vance, Witkoff, and Kushner together in Pakistan represents the highest level American diplomatic engagement with the Iran peace process since the war began. It signals that the Trump administration genuinely believes a deal is reachable. It explains Trump's optimism at the NBA Finals on Monday, and it tells you that whatever happens in the next 72 hours will be shaped in significant part by what those 3 men discussed in Islamabad over the weekend. The World Cup dimension of this war is something America needs to pay attention to, because it is creating a situation without precedent in the history of international sports and international conflict. Iran's national soccer team is playing its opening World Cup match on June 15th, this Sunday, at SoFi Stadium in Inglewood, California, just outside Los Angeles. FIFA has revoked Iran's ticket allocation, meaning Iranian fans cannot attend their own team's games on American soil. Iranian players are training in Tijuana, Mexico, just across the California border, because visa processing problems made it impossible for them to use their original training base in Tucson, Arizona. The country whose military shot down an American helicopter and fired ballistic missiles at American bases in Bahrain and Jordan will have its athletes competing inside America in 3 days. Iranian soccer players will stand on American soil at SOFI Stadium and play a World Cup match while their country's armed forces are shooting at American military aircraft in the Strait of Hormuz. That is not a contradiction. That is the world in June 2026. And it is the world that the peace deal Trump is describing as 2 or 3 days away is supposed to begin resolving. Let us now look at what the deal actually requires at this stage, because the reporting from inside the negotiations gives us a clear and updated picture of what is on the table right now. According to NBC News, the ceasefire framework requires 3 things to happen simultaneously. First, Iran must reopen the Strait of Hormuz to commercial shipping. Second, Hezbollah must completely cease fire and evacuate its operatives from south of the Litani River in Lebanon. Third, the United States must proportionately lift its naval blockade of Iranian ports as those 2 things are delivered. On the nuclear question, the framework asks Iran to begin negotiations on its enriched uranium stockpile in a 60-day follow-on process. The IAEA would resume inspections inside Iran, and sanctions relief would be provided proportionately to Iranian compliance with the framework's requirements. That is the deal. It is not a surrender document. It is not the unconditional capitulation that Trump demanded in early March. It is a framework that gives Iran sanctions relief, port access, and participation in World Cup diplomacy in exchange for reopening the strait, pulling Hezbollah back from the litany, and beginning nuclear talks. And the question of whether it gets signed in 2 or 3 days or collapses into another round of missile exchanges depends almost entirely on one thing: whether Hezbollah agrees to withdraw from south of the Litani River before Israel withdraws from Lebanese territory it currently occupies. Those 2 withdrawals, Hezbollah's and Israel's, are the word or sentence that has been blocking this deal for weeks. They are still blocking it tonight. Here's the human dimension that should anchor everything else in tonight's report. Lebanon's health ministry confirmed today that the death toll from Israeli attacks since March 2nd has now reached 3,666 people. 3,666. That is not an abstraction. Each one of those people had a name, a family, a home, a life. More than 10,000 wounded, more than 1 million displaced. Iran's war against America and Israel has been fought in significant part on Lebanese soil, by Lebanese bodies, in Lebanese homes. And the peace deal being described as 2 or 3 days away requires Hezbollah, the force that brought Lebanon into this war, to stand down and pull back. Lebanon's people, after 104 days, deserve that peace more than anyone, and they have the least power to determine whether it happens. Here is the full picture as of tonight, June 12th, 2026, day 104 of this war. Trump says a deal is 2 or 3 days away and the strait will reopen immediately. Iran fired on a commercial tanker in the strait this morning. American forces shot down 2 Iranian drones protecting civilian shipping. Iran says it will resume the full war if Israel keeps attacking Lebanon. Israel says the war has not ended. Israel requires Hezbollah to evacuate south of the Litani before any ceasefire holds. Hezbollah requires Israel to withdraw from Lebanon simultaneously. Those 2 conditions are mutually exclusive without a third-party enforcement mechanism that does not yet exist. Vance, Witkoff, and Kushner were in Pakistan over the weekend. Markets rallied on Trump's optimism. Asian stocks surged 3%. Iran has 21% of its pre-war missiles left, and 3,666 Lebanese people are dead. America, here is my question for you tonight, and it cuts through everything else. Trump has said the deal is 2 or 3 days away at least 5 times in the past 5 weeks. Each time, something has stopped it. A drone, a missile, a Lebanon strike, a disagreement over a word or sentence, an IRGC attack on a tanker. Here is what I want to know from you right now. Do you believe Trump this time? Do you think the deal actually gets signed in the next 72 hours? Or do you think we will be sitting here next week with Trump saying the same thing again 2 or 3 days away, while drones fly over the Strait of Hormuz and missiles fall on Lebanon? Drop your answer in the comments right now. This is the most important poll this channel has ever run. And I promise you, whatever the outcome of the next 72 hours, we will be here the moment it happens. Subscribe and turn on notifications. The next 2 or 3 days are going to define the rest of this war.